When I was 7 years of age, my dad sent me to a Church of England school. The first half an hour of every school day was the Bible. The first day that I attended, we were given a Bible and we were told to open it up, and the teacher started to read Genesis 1, Genesis 2. I thought it was wonderful. I thought, yes, this answers all of the beautiful and wonderful creation that I see around. And there it is, I thought. There it is. There is a being that made all of this, created all this. Later on, maybe a year or so later, we were to memorize the 10 Commandments, as in Exodus 20, word for word. Not the shortened version, but every single word that is in the King James Bible in Exodus 20. We were to memorize the 10 Commandments. And as time went on again, and I was 10, 11, 12, 13, I used to often think how wonderful the world would be if all the world was keeping the 10 Commandments. I just thought they were wonderful, and that there wasn't really anything too fantastically hard about it, per se, keeping those 10 Commandments as I would read them and think about them in my mind. What is wrong with having just one God, the true God, that you are serving and following? Jesus upheld the Father's commandments. Jesus taught obedience to the Father, obedience to the commandments. He said that his brothers and sisters were those that did the will of God the Father. The Apostle Paul has often been used, his writings, to do away with the commandments. And that's just crazy. If you do away with the commandments, that means you can do your own thing. You're then allowed to go just out and steal as much as you like and go out murdering people. You can take God's name in vain and with profanity that you hear today all around you. It's absolutely crazy to think that those 10 Commandments have ever been done away with, any single one of them. The Apostle Paul's attitude to the 10 Commandments was in Romans chapter 7. You need to read it. Read it slowly, and you will see clearly the attitude that Paul had, that the commandments were holy, just, and good. God, in his commandments, says that he will show mercy unto those that love him and keep his commandments. It's written right there in Exodus 20. You're not saved by works. You're not saved by obedience to the 10 Commandments per se, because you've only got to break one of them at any time and you come under sin. You're sinned. You have sinned. 1 John 3:4. You have sinned and you've come under the death penalty. You need Jesus Christ and his sacrifice and blood to cleanse you from those sins. When at times you do fall short and miss the mark and you break any of the 10 Commandments. But you have to have an attitude like Paul had in Romans 7. I got to say it again. Romans 7, Paul gives you his attitude towards the law of God, the 10 Commandments of God. He loved them. He knew that they were holy, they were good. And so they are. And by having that attitude of willing to see how beautiful and wonderful they are, and an attitude of willing to serve the Father by keeping those commandments, you can qualify for his grace. You can come under his umbrella of mercy and grace when at times you do slip and fall and come short of the commandments of God. 1 John, the epistle of 1 John chapter 1 and into chapter 2, read that. The beautifulness of the 10 Commandments of God is wonderful. You should know them. They should be a part of you, a part of your mind. You should meditate upon them. So if you haven't for a while, sit down and meditate upon those 10 Commandments. Now there's one commandment there which has the most words in it that people just ignore today. They just think that's the least of the commandments of God. It doesn't matter today whether we keep the 4th commandment or not concerning the Sabbath day. Oh, that's nothing today. We live in a bustle, fast world, hustle and bustle, fast world. It doesn't matter about the Sabbath day and keeping it. It's a part of the 10 Commandments, my friends. I found nothing wrong with it as a child growing up. It's God's will. It's his mind. The Father in Isaiah, through Isaiah, said, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts. And as the heaven is higher than the earth, so are my ways, my thoughts, and my ways higher than your ways. And you need to take time then to study, to meditate upon the 10 commandments of God, and take time to think about that 4th commandment of God. It has not been done away with. It should be obeyed today. It's part of the 10 commandments of God. Righteousness. What is righteousness? I'll give you the Bible definition. Psalm 119, verse 172. That's the definition of righteousness. What's the definition of the wicked? Psalm 119, verse 53 is the definition for the wicked. Meditate upon the commandments of God. If nobody was murdering today, think how wonderful the world would be. If nobody was stealing today, you wouldn't have to have locks on your houses and on your cars. You wouldn't have to lock up your bicycle. You know, when you go to work on your bike and you put it against that post and you have to put a big lock around it, you wouldn't need to do that. You wouldn't need to take all of these precautions that people might steal your things, because everybody would be obeying that commandment. And nobody would be coveting. No matter what you've got, no matter what gifts you've got, talents you've got, physical possessions you've got, everybody would be happy with their lot. Everybody would be content with what they have. And nobody would be coveting people. Nobody would be bearing false witness, making up stories about people, lying in the court systems. It just wouldn't be. Nobody would be bearing false witness against others. Those commandments, my friends, are wonderful. You need to think about them. I thought about them as a 12, 13, 14-year-old. And then I would see the things around me, and that was back in the 1950s. And I would see the things around me and think, oh man, if only this world was keeping the commandments of God. And today, the world is so much more evil and sinful. And so the contrast today is like night and day compared to what it was in the 1950s. You need to love the commandments of God. You need to know that this is God the Father's character. It's his will. It's his desire that all people would be obeying the 10 commandments of God, and that they would be doing, as Jesus said in Matthew 4:4, living by the Father's every word. And his every word, the Bible, expands the commandments of God. It magnifies, makes them larger. Jesus did the same thing in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. There's no way that the commandments of God are done away with. Jesus amplified them in those chapters of Matthew. And so the whole Bible is an amplification of keeping the commandments, the will, the ways of God the Father. So you need to just sit down and think. Open up to those commandments. Exodus chapter 20. Look at each one and meditate upon each one, and see how wonderful this world would be if all people would be serving and obeying the 10 commandments of God.